Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, July 27th, the end of July, the end of summer. The summer's over. We only got a month left. It's nice and hot and sunny and has been, but it's almost over. Hopefully you guys have done stuff for your summer. You've enjoyed it so far. I'm your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on show number 1102 here on the last Wednesday of July. On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about Apple earnings, the fact that Apple's earnings weren't very good for them, sales not very good for them, not a very good earnings report, and yet the stock went up by $6 today. We'll also talk about the billionth iPhone was sold. The billionth iPhone was sold last year. That's 9 years. And Apple sold 1 billion of them. And there's a remarkable stat that goes along with that, and I'll talk to Jim about that a little bit later on. In our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about, now that you bought your first DSLR, what next? Not exactly that, but I got into an argument with a fellow photographer, a friend of mine, Tony Rosario, on Twitter this afternoon. Some of you may have seen it. About, let me turn stuff around. Ooh, look at that. There we go. About shooting in manual mode. And my argument that beginners shouldn't do it. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Plus, as always, your emails. Send emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com if you want to tune in, if you want me to read your emails during the show, or anytime during the week. You can always send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. We would encourage you to join us in one of our 2 chat rooms, the IRC chat room, thanks to our friend Monty, who set that up on the front page of the yourmaclifeshow.com website. And you can join new folks like Joe Kaz. Joe Kaz has joined us in the IRC chat room. Or you can click on the link and join us in the Telegram chat room. The Telegram chat room is open 24 hours a day. IRC is only open during the show. Telegram is open anytime you'd like. So anytime you want to just chat. We had a great discussion this afternoon. One of the reasons why I like Telegram is that it allows us to have conversations we can't have on Twitter, longer form discussions. And so Telegram is a lot of fun. We get to see some great photos from our resident drone expert, Steve Huther. Steve's in Alberta, and he's got a DJ Phantom 3 drone. And he keeps trying to convince me to buy a drone, the bastard. I don't need a drone. I want a drone. I don't need a drone. So all that and much, much more coming up a little later on in the show. First of all, there's this... I usually try to find some interesting stuff off the top of the show to talk to you guys about. As a motorcycle rider, I love diners. When you go riding, you're often looking for little hole-in-the-wall type diners. And saw this story, 8 foods that are always better at a diner. Is there foods that you only eat in restaurants or in diners? For me, I never have orange juice at home. I never drink it at home. But whenever I go to a diner, to a restaurant for breakfast, I always order coffee and orange juice. I don't know why that is. One of the things that they say, this is from thekitchen.com, one of the things that they say foods that are better at a diner are breakfast potatoes. I don't know if they're better than at home because I've never had them at home. I've never had breakfast potatoes at home. Pancakes. I don't think so because my mom made great, I've never made pancakes myself. My mom always made great pancakes, but when I crave pancakes, I don't make them at home. I go to IHOP. I love their blueberry pancakes. Grilled cheese sandwiches. Are they better in diners? I've never had a grilled cheese in a diner. Tuna melt. Never had a tuna melt anywhere. I don't like tuna. A Greek salad. Well, I've never had a Greek salad at home. Never made it. Never had it. Club sandwiches. Same thing. Never had a club sandwich at home either. Milkshakes. I got to agree with them on that. Milkshakes are always better outside the home than inside the home. Just because I think you don't have the true milkshake machine at home. But I know I've tried a couple times to make milkshakes at home. They're just never as good as in a diner. And lemon meringue pie. Now, I got to disagree with that one because I only ever have lemon meringue pie at my mom's, which means I haven't had lemon meringue pie in 25 years. But pie in general, I think it's a toss-up. There are good diner pies, and it's always if it's homemade, like in the diner. And I've had some bad diner. I had a diner pie, a place here in up near Kamloops. So it's just frickin' awful, just horrible, mushy. It was blueberry pie, mushy, flavorless blueberries, and just a doughy crust. So yeah, I got to disagree with that. I hop with your phone having pancakes. I don't know what that means, DJ. P. Boo says, I make pancakes using the Alton Brown recipe. What's the Alton Brown recipe? And Macman says, biscuits and gravy. DJ McIntosh, your kids go back to school on August the 8th? The 8th? That's insane. I mean, it's good. It's good that they go, because why do kids need a summer vacation? They're kids. Where do they need a vacation from? I don't think there should be summer vacation for kids. Not 2.5 months like we did when we were a kid. We got out of school, I think the 20-somethingth of June in Nova Scotia, and went back the Tuesday after Labor Day. So June, July, August, that's 2.5 months. Why? What do we need a break from? Just give kids 2 weeks off at summertime so they can go on vacation with their parents. Otherwise, you don't need 2 months off. It's a holdover from when kids helped on the farm. Well, I know it's a holdover, but kids aren't working on farms anymore. Monty, some here in Atlanta start back tomorrow. Good. They should. Hey, this is something we were talking about in the pre-show, and we were discussing whether this was a Canadian word or a British word. Do you know what a busker is? Busker. Do any of my American friends know what a busker is? It's a hint. It's a person. The reason why I say this is because at the 30th anniversary of the Halifax International Busker Festival is happening in my hometown of Halifax, Nova Scotia, July 27th to August 1st. It's really kind of a fun event. Go to buskers.ca to get an idea of what it is. And basically what it is a busker is a street performer, somebody who performs on street corners for money. You know, the loony or the quarters that you throw into their pot. And we often think of them as being singers or guitar players or that kind of folks, but it runs the gamut of all kinds of things, magicians and flame eaters and dancers and anybody who performs on that. So what the Halifax International Busker Festival is these folks come to Halifax, perform on street corners, and then get judged. And then if they still do it the same way, I don't know if they still do it the same way as when I was back home, there'll be a big gala evening, and the judges walked around anonymously judging buskers. And then they picked like the 10 best, and they go up on stage at the big theater, and then it became like America's Got Talent, and the winner won, whatever it was. It's a neat idea. It's a lot of fun. If you ever get a chance, if you're very interested in going to Halifax, this is a great time of year to go to Halifax, Nova Scotia during the International Buskers Festival. So if you get a chance, go do that. And by the way, next year, as I keep saying, if you want a great family vacation, there's 2 of them I'll recommend. First of all, there's my photo workshop, going to happen in spring. Not official yet, but we're probably pretty close. Then there's also the Parade of Tall Ships in Halifax, Nova Scotia in late July next year, 2017. So if you want one of 2 great vacations, those would be fantastic options for you and the family. Halifax and Nova Scotia in general is a beautiful, really, really pretty place to go. Anyone who knows me knows I've always tried to get folks to go visit Nova Scotia, especially you Americans, because it's relatively cheap because of the American dollar or Canadian dollar exchange rate. So if you're looking for a vacation that's a little close to home, but something that's interesting and different, definitely check out my home province of Nova Scotia. If you have any questions about it, let me know. You can also go to Tourism Nova Scotia, and they will send you a... Hang on, I'll show you. Just a second. Everyone wait. Just wait. sure most places do this, but I don't have any interest in traveling to most other places. But you can actually order the Nova Scotia Doers and Dreamers Travel Guide, and it's got it looks like a couple hundred pages of things to do, places to go, stuff to see. There are coupons in it. There are golf trips. There are whale watching things, and it's broken down by the regions of Nova Scotia. And you get this for free. You go to the what's the website? Tourism. Doesn't say. Tourism. Do a Google search for Tourism Nova Scotia. NovaScotia.com, I guess. It's free, and they'll mail it to you. It's an actual physical copy. You can get the PDF. You can download the PDF, or you can get the physical copy. And so, if you're interested in going to Nova Scotia, grab one of those. Macman says there's a guy that plays sax around O'Hare Airport. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's kind of neat. So sometimes the buskers are really good. And so going to the International Busker Festival, you get to see like the really, really good ones. Well, that's a fun thing to do. Fun for kids, too, because they're open-air performances. And I just love when parents give the money to the kid, and the kid shyly walks up and drops the coins or drops the bills into the busker's basket. For me, I think that's just kind of cute. Folks talking about Phoenix averaged 110 degrees the week I was there. 96 degrees in Atlanta for Monty with a heat index around 108. What is it? I think it was only in the upper. I got a text message from Sly saying issues with snack, can't seem to get in the room. My net connection. Have a good show. Okay, so Sly might not be able to make it tonight. 28 degrees here in Chilliwack. The world's hottest day ever is recorded in Kuwait as temperatures soared to 54 degrees Celsius. 54 degrees Celsius. What's that in Fahrenheit, kids? Siri, what's 54 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit? Just ask Siri. 129 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, remind me never to go to Kuwait. Good God. Oof. I can't comprehend that kind of heat. I don't care if it's a dry heat or a not dry heat or whatever it is. That's freaking hot. That's stupidly hot. It's only in the upper 80s here, and I've got 3 fans blowing air at me in different directions. When I first moved to the States, first moved to Nashville, I turned my air conditioning on in March, and it didn't go off till October. Canadians, we're not built for the heat. We're just not heat people. What else was I going to do? Something else I wanted to show you guys. Where was it? Apple. No, I'll get to that one later. Later on the show, we are going to be talking about, in our starting point photography segment, automatic mode versus manual mode, and how to get from one to the other. Now that you bought a DSLR, what do you do next? And we'll talk about that a little later on in the show. But up next, though, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about 1 billion iPhones sold and Apple's objectively bad earnings report, and yet it seems like folks aren't worried about the company. Talk about that and much, much more coming up. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Do you mind not talking while I'm talking, Jim?
Do you mind? I'm going to order a beer.
You should have had one already in your hand by the time I called you.
All right. So usually I already have a beer in my hand when you call.
Of course.
Because you're so goddamn painful to talk to that I have to drink when I talk to you. But tonight I'm at another place where I have to go up and order a beer. So...
But if you're at some place where they serve you beer, you would have already gotten one within 2.3 seconds of sitting down. I know you.
And what did I say? What did I say to you when you called me? You should have reminded me because you were calling. So I'm just walking into the place now.
Got it. All right, fine. Anyway, yesterday Apple announced. Shut up. Apple announced a fairly mediocre, if we're going to be honest, earnings report, and yet, as people pointed out, lower sales, lower margins, lower profits, lower cash on hand, and yet Apple rose by almost $7 in the stock price today. What the hell?
Isn't that fun?
That's just ridiculous. What do you think of the results as announced yesterday? Was it a mediocre quarter for Apple?
It was different.
Yeah.
I mean, they went down in sales on everything.
Yep.
And it was really funny yesterday because I saw a tweet from Ben Beharan.
Yes.
That said, and I respect Ben completely. I love the guy, but I saw a tweet, and obviously out of context, but he said Mac sales are up 2, and I thought, oh my God, how badly did I screw up? Because I said down. Did I read the numbers wrong?
Yeah.
I tweeted back to him and said up with a question mark, and he responded back and said, "Oh, up over analysts' expectations."
Yeah.
Okay, so basically fake shit.
Numbers they pull out of their asses.
Right. Because analysts' expectations mean absolutely nothing.
Except for the fact that analysts' expectations drive the stock price.
Okay, exactly. I was going to say, in the real world, they do have some impact because it will drive up stock price because they beat expectations. But that's so awful because so many years Apple blew away their expectations and their stock went down.
Yep.
And this time their sales are down, but they beat expectations and their stock goes up like $7. I mean, we're living in bizarro world here.
No, and I understand that it's all about expectations. It's all about the future and that kind of stuff. But still, like you said, in the real world, this is just bizarre. It's just utterly bizarre. I mean, Apple dropped 15% year over year in revenue. China revenue fell off a cliff by 33%. Their other category, which include the Apple Watch, dropped 16%. I mean, this was a disaster. That's the only way you can describe it, except for the fact that people have to keep remembering that last year's results were astronomically good. They were really, really spectacularly good. And therefore, the numbers this year in the same period are still good, and they still sold 40 million iPhones. But they're just not as good compared to that particular quarter. Now, the downside is Apple's predicting another down quarter for the next set of results. That'll be 3 quarters in a row where Apple isn't doing very well.
Well, if you take a look at where we are with the down numbers, let's remember that they're down 7 million iPhones, but they still sold 40 million.
Yep.
40 million.
That's right.
including apparently the 1 billionth.
Yep.
Now, that's iPhone. That's their biggest business. They still sold 40 million. Let's take a look at Macs. They're down 5,000. Still sold 4 million. iPads, they're down 1 million. They still sold almost 10 million.
No.
I mean, it's not like Apple, and I'm not trying to make excuses for them here, because I said very clearly that sales were down across the board.
Yes.
So, but when you look at iPad in particular, revenue is up by 7%.
Yep.
So I talked to Christina Warren on my podcast yesterday, and Christina said that she felt that what this means is that the iPad has leveled up, that it basically hit bottom this quarter.
Yeah.
But there are some other considerations to look at with this. One is the introduction of the 9.7 iPad Pro.
Yes.
I think that had a big influence on revenue. So, I'm not sure if iPad has hit bottom or if it's going to start seeing it come up. But at some point, Apple is going to release new Macs, new iPhone, and it's going to start competing against these weak quarters, and it's going to start going up again.
Yes. Yeah.
I do believe that. So, yeah, it's amazing. Overnight, people were asking, I woke up this morning to all kinds of, emails and texts, and are you worried about Apple? Do you have any concerns?
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
I don't. I really don't, and that's not because I'm a fanboy or I love the company. It's because I've been following them for over 20 years.
Yep.
No, I'm just not concerned. If I didn't believe that Apple was focused on what's coming next and the different things, the different products that they're coming out with, then I could say, you know what? Yeah, if they come out with 5 different versions of the iPhone in September, I'd say, oof, that's bad.
Yeah.
Then you're pulling a Samsung. But we basically know that they're going to have an iPhone 7 or whatever it's going to be called.
Yep.
And they're going to have a smaller version that a 4-inch version, obviously, because they just released that. And they may have another thing that is already there. Maybe it's the 6
Yep.
or maybe not. Who knows? But, they're going to have a couple of different models, most of them already as products. One of them is going to be brand new.
Yeah.
So, they release this and away you go. So at some point, they're going to compete against these down quarters, and it's going to look great again. But that's the nature of the business. It's going to be up and down.
Yeah, it's definitely going to, and even more so now than it has in the past. We're going to see this cycle over and over and over again for the next X number of quarters and years for Apple. It's just the nature of where they are in this cycle with 1 billion iPhone users. Not everyone is moving at the exact same speed anymore. It was when there was only 10 million. It was when there was only 50 million. But now, with this huge amorphous blob of people, the usual product cycle information that Apple has gets thrown out the window, because it won't take much for a group of those billion to change Apple's fortunes iPhone-wise, good or bad, in any number of ways. So as long as they're still making and selling millions upon millions of iPhones and making billions upon billions of dollars, the only worry anyone should have about Apple is if you are a stock price person. That's the only issue anyone should have with Apple. And if you're a stock price person, you shouldn't be involved with Apple anyway. I think the big thing that a lot of folks pointed out, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is a lot of people showed, and people have to remember that Steve Jobs said this many, many, many years ago. Apple will R&D their way out of any downturn. Remember when Jobs said that 15 years ago? People were like, what do you mean? No. When in downtimes, you hold on to your money and you squirrel it away and you put it under your mattress. But Jobs said, no, we're going to innovate our way out of any downturn. People pointed out that Apple's percentage of their R&D budget for compared to their revenues or sales, whatever it is, was up to something like 9%. And people are pointing out that Apple is spending a ton of money on products we haven't seen yet.
Of course.
They're spending billions of dollars on things that we haven't even heard of.
And that's why you can't be concerned about where Apple is going. Now, there's a very high likelihood that we'll never see some of those products.
Sure, yeah.
You know, and that's just the way it goes. But when Apple was spending that type of money in 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4 on R&D for iPhone and iPad, I mean, you could have said, what the hell are they spending all this money on? Because we haven't seen the products.
Yep.
You know, well, then all of a sudden this comes out. So are they spending all of this money on the car? Are they spending it on, you know, new technologies for iPhone? You know, it could be any of these things. We just don't know. We don't know.
Let's go to that statement you just made. Are they spending the money on the car? What with the news that, the rumor that Big Bob Mansfield has taken over the Project Titan, which is the rumored car project. According to a headline I read, it sure looks like Apple is getting really serious about its car project. Do you agree with that? Jim?
Yes.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
Did you hear what I said, Jim?
That Apple's getting. Sorry, I walked inside the bar to take a drink of my beer.
Don't do that. Stay outside.
And I lost you. Jesus.
The Vanity Fair says it sure looks like Apple's getting really serious about its car project. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I'll tell you. The way that I read Mansfield being put in charge of the car is that there's been a lot of, I don't know, bickering, but there's been a lot of, and it's not mismanagement. It's kind of everybody wants to see different things. And I think Mansfield is the one to come in and say, this is the way we're going. Let's not forget that Bob Mansfield is just not just an ex-Apple executive that they sort of like. He's a really smart guy.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to hardware, he's a really smart guy. And when it comes right down to it, an Apple car is hardware.
Yeah.
That's all it is. You get Johnny to design it, you get the software guys to do it, and it's hardware. It's another Apple device. So I am happy to see Mansfield involved.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Do you believe that it is in fact a car project and not the internals of the car project?
Well,
see, that's where I think all this stuff is going. I don't believe that Apple's going to come out with a four-wheel vehicle with an engine and a big Apple logo on the hood. I don't think Apple's going to do that. I think Apple is working on the interior of a car. They will then sell to Ford and GM and BMW and VW.
And they could very well do that too.
I think it makes more sense for the company.
And, you know, Bob could oversee that as well.
Exactly. That's right. That's where I think it's going, because it just doesn't make any sense to me that Apple would come out with a vehicle that they're only going to sell one of every 10 years. The iPhone, we buy iPhones every year, every 2 years, every 3 years at the most for the most people. But our cars last us between 7 and 10 years. I don't think it's a viable. I don't think Apple wants a business that takes that long for them to get repeat customers.
It's a big business, though.
Yeah, true. It is. I'm not going to disagree with you on that one. That is absolutely true. Hey, I saw a tweet the other day about this, and I immediately thought of you and checked, went to twitter.com/J Dalrymple. You don't have a blue check mark on your Twitter account. Why not, Jim?
I don't know.
Have you applied?
What do I need to do that?
Thank you. Thank you. I can't believe the whining of people who have applied to get the blue check mark don't get it. The primary example is Federico Petici over there at Mac Stories, who took to Twitter to whine about the fact that he had been refused his blue check mark on Twitter. Come on. Are you kidding me? Who cares?
Well, maybe I'll get a blue check mark someday, and that will make me popular.
Exactly. That's what I don't get. These people that think that somehow that conveys some sort of cachet to them, or they become more important, or it validates their existence on Twitter. It's a frickin' blue check mark. Okay,
I'm gonna make one in Pixelmator and just put it on my profile.
Actually, you know what? You can't do that. That's against the Twitter terms and conditions.
God damn it. Okay, I'm going to have another beer.
But it just cracks me up. Okay, go ahead and apply for the blue check mark. But when you don't get it, you don't go on Twitter and whine about it. You look like a giant baby when you do that.
Why didn't he get it?
Oh, who knows? Who cares?
Well, okay, I guess this segment is done.
Yes, exactly. Moving on. Next segment, before I get too pissed off. Apple announced today that they had sold the billionth iPhone last week sometime. You know what I find the most interesting about that? The fact that
Apple announced what?
That they had sold the billionth iPhone last week.
Yes. Sorry, I went back inside for a drink.
You know what I find the most interesting about that story? According to the Financial Times, they've sold half of those in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It took them from 2007 to about 2013 to sell 500 million, but it only took them 2014, 15, 16 to sell the other 500 million iPhones. That is amazing. Remember when Steve Jobs announced the iPhone first, and they said they were happy to sell how many in a year? 10 million.
1%. Yep.
1%. He thought, and we thought he was being optimistic.
Yep.
We all thought 10 million a year? Not a chance, dude. No way you're going to sell that many iPhones.
Yeah, but good luck with that, Steve.
Exactly. That's right. Boy, man, you just got your head up your butt. You have no idea what you're talking about. And guess what? They have now sold 1 billion iPhones. What a remarkable number.
He's talking about selling 10 million a year.
Yep.
And they sold 40 million last quarter. 90 days.
In a bad quarter. It's just testament. You said in the story on that you posted on the Loop how much the iPhone has literally changed your life. I don't know of another electronic device that I could say changed my life as much as the iPhone has over the last 9 years.
Not as much.
Not as much.
But I was trying to think about that. What kind of device has changed your life as much as an iPhone? Yeah. And you look back at a Walkman. Walkman changed my life. I could walk around with my music now.
Interesting.
And a pocket full of cassettes.
Yeah.
Certainly the notebook computer certainly changed the way that I work and the way that I do things, but the iPhone changed the way that not only that I work, but that I communicate. And no other device has done that. That's pretty big when you change the way that you actually communicate with other people. That's pretty big.
See, I think that the other device that changed my life more so than the iPhone, for me personally, was the car. I think at the age of 16, when you get a car, that opens and expands your life and changes your life in more fundamental ways.
Oh, I know. That's different, though. I mean, now you're not talking about something new that came along and changed your... well, if that's the case, then for me it was Heineken. Heineken changed my life then.
It made you the man you are today.
It made me the man I am today, good or bad.
Exactly. That's right. But it's definitely interesting. That's why I said electronic device. That would be the single most important device that's ever entered my life, that changed my life in easily fundamental ways and really interesting kind of ways.
You know what? I'm still going with Heineken. Now that I think of
it. Speaking of devices that change your life, there was 2 stories this week that just made me shake my head. We all know what the Internet of Things is. The Internet of Things is the idea that objects that aren't normally internet connected are now becoming internet connected and providing data both to yourself and to other things. The primary example nowadays is the Nest thermostat. Did you see the story in Business Insider? Nest thermostats go offline in massive outage during the U.S. heat wave. During a heat wave, these things stopped working.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Now, my question is, why does my thermostat shut down when it hasn't got an internet connection? It doesn't need to shut down when I don't have an internet connection. It needs to continue to provide heat and air conditioning.
Wow, that's awful.
That's horrible. And it's not only horrible, it's freaking dangerous too.
Well, it's Google.
No, hang on now. It's not just Google, because here's the other story I saw, which at first will sound funny until you give it the big picture thoughts. There was a company who makes a pet feeder. You know those automated pet feeders that are on a timer. You put a whole big bunch of food in the hopper, and it automatically opens up at 5 o'clock and spits out a bunch of food for your cat or your dog.
Yeah.
All right. The PetNet service disruption. We are experiencing some difficulties with one of our third-party servers. This is currently being investigated. You may experience a loss of scheduled feeds and failed remote feedings. Please ensure that your pets have been fed manually until we resolve this issue.
Jesus.
Why is the pet feeder connected to the internet?
Wow.
It's just a frickin' timer. It's just a clock. It's an alarm clock attached to the internet, and when the internet doesn't work, the clock stops working, so your pets die?
How long did it take them to come back on?
That was today, so I have no idea whether or not the things are on. But that's going to be the problem with the Internet of Things going forward. Things that don't need internet connection are being connected to the internet, but they're being connected in such a way that they fail when the internet fails.
Wow.
There's no need for the pet feeder to fail because you've lost Wi-Fi, because Comcast in your neighborhood has gone down, because a third-party server no longer works.
No, that's bad.
The Internet of Things kind of terrifies me, because what's going to happen when we start...
could go home and feed your pet.
Well, what if you're on vacation?
Then you shouldn't have your pet home alone.
But it's a cat. Who cares? I'm kidding, all you cat people. But you know as well as I do, cats are much more... You can leave a cat alone for a weekend, right?
Well, whatever.
You can put a big bunch of food in the corner and the cat will be fine. You can't really do that with dogs. But maybe you want to go out for the evening and you'll have an outside dog feeder so your dog can run around the yard and get fed. It doesn't matter. It's still a stupid idea to have an internet pet feeder, first of all. But secondly, to have that internet pet feeder relying on internet access. What's going to happen when inevitably these Internet of Things devices start getting hooked up to things that are crucial to your life, like your thermostat, like your heart rate monitor, like your dialysis machine?
Yeah, don't do it.
All Internet of Things devices scare me because of that. That's the thing I look at first for any sort of internet device is what will it do when the internet fails? If it no longer works, I don't want that device in my home.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't trust that device if when because we've all had our internet services go down. Either your router craps out on you or Comcast has a service interruption or whatever it might be. Imagine sitting there with your dialysis machine all of a sudden, and you go and check, and there's an error message on the screen of your dialysis machine.
Please connect to the internet.
Exactly. Please call tech support at 1-900. Jesus.
1-900.
Sorry, I don't know where I got that one from. I'm sorry. Now, a good Internet of Things story, if we consider the Apple Watch an Internet of Things story, you wrote about this on The Loop, and that's where I first saw it. Our good friend Chuck Latornos, and Chuck is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. He is an absolute, utter sweetheart. Chuck had his Apple Watch heart rate monitor. Chuck was experiencing some heart palpitations, some shortness of breath, some things that for everyone else but Chuck, we would think we were having a heart attack. But Chuck, like a lot of men, ignored it. And it wasn't until he checked his Apple Watch and saw that his heart rate was abnormally fast that he decided to go seek medical help. Now, thank God Chuck is okay, that everything is fine. But wasn't that an interesting story that the Apple Watch kind of probably maybe saved his life?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and without that, he may have just thought, this is annoying. And then something bad could have happened.
And it's the story that we see from men in particular. We hear horror stories all the time of this exact same thing happening in men thinking, I just walked up some stairs, the shortness of breath will go away in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Not that it'll go away in 30 seconds. Guys will ignore this stuff for hours and hours and days on end. In the meantime, they are having a heart attack.
In a couple of days, they're planning your funeral.
Yeah, exactly. So, the bottom line, obviously, is don't ignore this kind of stuff. If you're feeling this way, go see a doctor, go see your company nurse, whatever it is. Don't put it off like Chuck was tempted to do. He says in the article,
I don't have a company nurse.
Chuck says in the article that if it hadn't been for his Apple Watch, he would have continued to ignore this.
Yep.
Which is just terrifying, Chuck. I hate to a world without Chuck Latornos is not a good world. It's just not a good world. We all heard this story when we first started covering Apple years and years ago. And it wasn't until I actually saw it that I believed it with my own eyes. The fact that Steve Jobs on his Mercedes didn't have a rear license plate. You remember this?
Yep.
And the reason why was this really weird story was the fact that in California, you didn't have to have a rear license plate in your car for 6 months after you bought the car.
Right.
Which to me is bizarre. Because I don't remember about Nova Scotia, but I know here in BC, when you buy a new vehicle, they hand you your license plates.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You get license plates right there at the dealership.
Oh, I didn't know
They
that.
put them on for you. When I bought my first car, when I got my first motorcycle, the insurance guy is sitting there in the dealership with a literally an Adidas bag full of license plates. And he pulls out a bunch and says, here, which one you want? You pick, I'll pick that one. And then one of the mechanics goes out and puts the license plate on your motorcycle. So you can't do that. You don't have to do that in California. So Steve Jobs, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, I think this shows that Steve Jobs was quite a bit of a more of a iconoclast dick than we ever thought. Because what he would do is 5 months and 29 days later, buy a new car.
Yep. Yep.
That story always cracked me up that Jobs would do that. And the story is that California has just now closed this Steve Jobs license plate loophole. They're just now telling people, no, you have to get at least paper plates on your car as soon as you buy it.
Well, he still wouldn't have done it.
He still wouldn't have done it, exactly. He would have just paid the tickets.
Yeah.
He would have just said, do you know who I am? Here's an iPod. Go away. He would just... But I love that story because it just shows that
I don't even think he would have pulled over. He just would have kept driving.
That's right. But the thing is, there's an actual danger there because if the police can't identify the vehicle, if he had gotten involved in an accident or a hit and run or speeding, or whatever it might be, the police can't write down the license plate number. But he didn't care. He, for some reason, didn't like license plates. Yeah. He didn't put them on his car. I think that story just absolutely cracks me up.
I love it.
I always love that story because it always reminded me, it made me think that how you feel about that story tells a lot about how you felt about Steve Jobs. If you thought, he's just an arrogant dick, that's what you thought of Steve Jobs. But I thought it was just A, funny, B, a little bit of an arrogant dick, but... But
I just thought it was great.
I thought it was, See, it's another thing of rich people get away with things poor people can't get away with. There's all kinds of different ways of looking at the story. Folks, I've been talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. He has his own podcast, 2 of them, up on the iTunes store. Do search for Jim Dalrymple, and you will find both of those. Jim, thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks, Shawn.
Enjoy your evening.
Thanks.
See you, buddy. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I think it's just one of the funniest stories about Steve Jobs was the fact that he would literally release the car every 6 months in order to not have to put a license plate on. Like, what's the big deal about putting a license plate on, dude? It's not that hard. It's not that big a deal. But he just didn't want to do it. He just refused to do it. Folks in the IRC chat room are talking about Scott Thrift. Heart attacks are nothing to ignore. If you have left-hand chest pain, numbness, get thee to a hospital. Monty says, us guys make terrible patients. It's absolutely true. It's really, really true. It's not something, especially as you get older. You know, Chuck is, I think, about the same age we are, middle-aged. You know, maybe if you're 20, you would ignore it for a period of time. But if you're 45, 50, 55, 60 years old, you can't ignore that stuff. You absolutely can't ignore it. Tough guy bullshit, North American culture. Yeah, that's right. Men are complete idiots about healthcare. I've often had a theory about why men are so bad, especially when we get sick at home. We have a cold, we have sniffles, we have the flu. I often thought, is it because guys are testing the women in our lives to see how they'll take care of us when it comes to minor things? That's why we're such babies. Subconsciously, we're testing the women. Or is it just we're just giant babies? You know, because if you're lying on the couch, you go, honey, I don't feel very good. And she's like, well, you're on your own. I'm going to work. You maybe think, not a good caretaker when I get old. I don't know. Possibility. Hey, next week, the Rio Olympics are going to start. The Olympics are going to be a fustercluck. Can we all agree on that? It just feels this is going to be a disaster. Now, granted, we said the same thing about Sochi, and they seem to pull that one off really well. This one feels worse. This feels like, yeah, this is not going to be a good thing. But I'll tell you right now, I will be glued to my TV, as I always am, for the Olympics. I don't need to see it on Twitter. I don't need to get it on third screens. I'll be right there. There's my TV. The Olympics will be on every moment on that screen. I love watching the Olympics. I love watching those sports that you don't get to see any other time. Dressage, horse dancing. I love horse dancing. I don't know anything about horse dancing, but I will watch dressage. I don't watch it any other time of the year. Once every 4 years, I watch dressage. What other sports do you watch? There are all kinds of sports that we only see every 4 years. They're played every year, but we only like javelin. Javelin just seems like a cool sport. Here, I'm going to throw this stick as far as I can. I bet I can throw the stick farther than you. With a hammer throw. Those are sports you don't see any other time. I'll watch hammer throw. I don't watch marathon, though, or race walking. I think race walking is stupid. And marathon is just boring. It's a bunch of greyhounds running for 2.5 hours. Doesn't do anything for me. Sherry says, the local girl, Melissa Bishop, is in the 800. Oh, the track and field stuff? Oh, yeah. I watch, except for the marathon. It was a marathon and the 5,000 meters. To me, those are just too long distance. I don't find them interesting. But at all the other track and field stuff, long jump, I'll watch a ton of long jump. There's a story over at Daily Hive, 7 of the most unusual Olympic sports at Rio. There are some sports that I'm not going to watch, like I said, race walking. And the other sport that I'm not going to watch is, and I think Canadians are pretty good at it, but I still won't watch it, is synchronized swimming. I think synchronized swimming is stupid. Same as synchronized diving. Oh, I like diving, but synchronized diving? No, I think synchronized diving is just I think it's an excuse to get more divers in the Olympics. I have no interest in synchronized diving. Dressage, though, horse dancing, man, I love horse dancing. It's so cool. The fact that you could train a horse to dance. Wayne, golf. I'll watch golf. I'll admit I'll watch Olympic golf. Scott Thrift, waiting for the Paralympics. Can't wait for the murder ball or wheelchair rugby. I don't think they show much Paralympics here, but I watch them whenever I can. Wheelchair basketball, same thing, another one. Steeplechase. I'll admit I watch steeplechase just to see if someone will fall in the water. I know it's cruel. I hate like horse steeplechase because a lot of horses get hurt that way. But human steeplechase, yeah, I look for someone to fall in the water. Now, shooting, archery I like. I'll watch the archery competition. The shooting competition just seemed even slower than the archery competitions. I don't watch, unless there's a Canadian involved, I don't watch much of the shooting competitions. And as much as I hate to admit it, I love watching the trampoline. I love the trampoline event, and not just because Canadians kick ass in trampoline. Why do we kick ass in trampoline? Trampoline and rhythmic gymnastics. We kick butt in both those sports. I don't get why. Is there a big trampoline culture in Canada? But for me, trampolines is like, I can't believe they can do that. Like spin 85 times. And pentathlon's another sport they don't show very much of, and I don't watch very much of it. Fencing, love watching fencing. Oh my God, I love watching fencing. Fencing is cool. Love to watch the fencing. What are the Olympic sports that you're looking forward to? Anything in particular? Any sport that you like to see? Like you make sure. Well, we all know, 100-meter dash and those kind of high-profile sports. But is there any sort of little off-the-wall weird Olympic sport that you like watching? I like the canoeing and the kayaking because Canadians are good at those. The sculls, the K2, and the canoes. I like watching those. But it's going to be hopefully the Brazilians can pull it off. I think we're going to see some issues, but fingers crossed. Hopefully it comes off well for them and for our athletes. So maybe they'll surprise us with any luck. In our starting point photography segment on tonight's show, when I first started learning how to ride a motorcycle, it was down in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was terrified. I had no idea how this was going to work. How I signed up, and I didn't know what was going to happen. So it was a weekend class, and on the Friday evening, we sat for 4 hours and got basically, not a lecture, but we got a presentation. Watched some videos. We got told about the basics. We got some whiteboard stuff of this. Got to ask questions of the instructors. And then on the Saturday, we were on the motorcycles for 4 hours. And the Saturday part was the terrifying part to me, because I had no idea how they were going to do this. We get there at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and there's all these little motorcycles, and they were little. They were like 250cc motorcycles lined up, and the instructor said, okay, go and pick out a motorcycle. And I think I outweighed the motorcycle. They were small bikes. And the instructor told us to sit in the bike, to just sit in the bike. Okay, now stand up and move the bike back and forth. Feel the weight of the bike between your legs. Now, because we had already gone through all the different bits and pieces of the bike, where the clutch was, where the brake was, and all that kind of stuff. He said, pull in the clutch and just walk the bike forward. Now turn it around and walk it back down the other end. And it became fairly quickly to me that the instructors were telling us one thing, a basic thing, and then telling us the next thing that built on the previous thing. So it was like building blocks. So they gave us one building block, and we got used to that building block. And they gave us another one, and then another one, and another one. And so we built a little wall of knowledge. We didn't turn the bikes on for the first hour. We just kept walking them around and feeling how the bike felt and asking questions. And even once we turned it on, we didn't go very far turning it on. The instructor said, okay, turn the bike on, and now just let the clutch out very, very gently and just feel the bike move. As soon as it moves, pull the clutch in. And we just kept doing that, just feeling where the clutch point was, just like in a car, feeling where the clutch disengages and the gas kicks in. We kept doing that over and over and over again, all day long. At the end of the day, I was still scared, but I felt more confident on the motorcycle. I told you that story to tell you this story. There was an article on a website, Your First DSLR, Now What? And the number one tip they gave on that website is quite possibly the worst thing you can say to a beginning photographer. And just go away. Look at all these things popping up. And what their advice was is get off the auto mode, as soon as possible and start shooting on manual mode. And I posted on Twitter, that's really bad advice. That's really remarkably stupid advice, as a matter of fact. What the equivalent of that advice would be if you're a motorcyclist is if we had gone to that class and the instructor tossed us keys to a 1,000cc motorcycle, here, go ride around for a bit. It would have been the same if they had given us the keys to a Porsche 911 Turbo Carrera and said, hey, there's a racetrack over there. Go win a race. That's not what you tell beginners. That's not what you should be doing as a beginning photographer, as a beginning DSLR user. I've had many people in my classes say, I'm having trouble in manual mode. And I tell them, then get off manual mode. What do you mean? Well, do you know what aperture priority mode is? No. Do you know what shutter priority mode is? No. Then don't shoot manual. You shouldn't jump into the deep end of the pool until you've learned to wade. You shouldn't do the hard things before you've learned the easy things. You shouldn't learn the absolute most complicated part of photography before you've learned the beginning basic building blocks of photography, of your camera. I tell everyone in my class, they've got, a lot of folks will come with the Canon Rebel line. Great beginning DSLR. I would encourage you, if you're looking for a DSLR, Canon has been making the Rebel for 20 years now. And it's a good basic camera. Even buy yourself a used one, a year old, 2 years old, you'll take good pictures with it. And most of the photographers in my class, I look at their mode dial on top of their camera, and they're on auto mode. Now, auto mode is fine, but auto mode, there's no point being auto mode with a DSLR. That's the same as shooting with an iPhone. Your iPhone's in auto mode all the time. It's an automatic camera. Point and shoots are often on auto mode. That's fine. But auto mode is what I also call average mode. It averages everything. And so I think for the most part, your shots are going to be average too. Yeah, you'll get the occasional good shot. But until you know more about photography and about your camera, it's just going to be occasional good shots. It's not going to be consistent good shots. So what I tell folks is read your manual. It's always important, even though the manual sucks. We all know the manual sucks, but read it anyway. And so you learn what the camera can do. Even though you may not understand everything in the manual, at least learn what the camera can do. Oh, my camera can do auto ISO. I don't know what that is, but it can do it. Oh, my camera can do exposure compensation. It can do auto bracketing. You don't need to know what that stuff does. Just know what it can do. And then the next thing I tell folks is look at the scene modes. Your camera is going to have my camera. Hang on a second. I have to go grab my camera. Usually I've got my camera right here for the show. Hang on. The hell? Sorry, hang on. Well, that's weird. Oh, I know. Sorry. Found it. Usually better prepared than this. So, on the top of your camera, your DSLR, you're going to have one of these dials. And I tell folks to switch to the scene mode dial. Read your manual and find out what kind of scene modes your camera has. And then go and shoot those modes. So you're going to have all scene mode cameras are going to have the four basics. They're going to have portrait mode, they're going to have landscape mode, they're going to have action mode, and they're going to have macro mode. And what you do is put your camera in portrait mode and then go take portraits. Take pictures of your kids and your significant others and your coworkers and your pets and goats, and practice taking portraits. Then switch to landscape mode, and then go into the woods and shoot landscapes. Go downtown and take pictures of cityscapes. Action mode, go someplace where go to a local dog park and take pictures of dogs running around, or your kids running around. Macro mode, take pictures of flowers. So do what the modes tell you to do and get really comfortable taking those kinds of pictures. The other thing you can do is shoot in one of the two basic modes, aperture priority mode or shutter priority mode. On Nikons, that is the A, and on Canons, that's AV. Shutter priority mode on Nikons is an S, and a TV on Canons. I'm not sure what it is on Pentax or the other ones, but read your manual. It'll help you figure it out. So learn what those modes are. Take a class. Take one of my classes. Go to YouTube. Do a search for aperture priority mode. Watch some videos. And then go out and practice aperture priority mode. Practice, practice, practice. Play around with your aperture priority settings. Increase your aperture. Decrease your aperture. Look at the photos and see how messing around with your aperture changes the photo. The way I learned it was I set my camera to aperture priority mode and then put my aperture down as low as it could get. And I had a stuffed penguin on my kitchen table. I had two of them, one in front and one about 2 feet back, and I started taking pictures. I would take one picture of the front penguin, change my aperture, take another picture, change the aperture, take another picture. I took one picture for every single one of my aperture stops. And then when I looked at the pictures on the computer, I saw how different apertures changed the depth of field, changed what was in focus. Oh, cool. So then I went out around my world doing the same thing, just looking for things that I could play around with to see how I could play with my aperture. After a while, 6 months, 10 months of doing this, I didn't have to think about aperture anymore. I knew the effect I wanted just by looking at a scene. I knew, because I practiced so much, what aperture would get me that effect. Remember, I've said before, visualize the shot before you actually push the shutter button. So I visualized what kind of depth of field I wanted, knew what aperture would accomplish that, switched the aperture very quickly, took the picture, boom, done. No messing around. Once I got really comfortable with aperture priority mode, I switched to shutter priority mode. I literally went to this was in Connecticut, and once a week or once every couple of weeks, Lisa would go off and get her hair done or her nails done or a pedicure, wherever it was. I'd go with her, and behind the salon she was at, there was a little pond, little lake, and it had a small waterfall, about 3 feet, just, babbling brook kind of waterfall. And I sat there with the camera, with the fastest shutter speed I had, on shutter priority mode, took a picture. One slower shutter speed, took a picture. One slower, and I kept doing that. And that's how I learned how shutter speed affected my photography. So that's what you want to do. You want to find one aspect of photography, as a beginner, find one aspect of photography, get really good at that aspect of it, understand how that aspect of photography changes the image, changes what you're creating, and then move on to the next one. Because those are the building blocks. Aperture, shutter, ISO. Those are the building blocks of your images. Exposure, flash, light, all that kind of stuff is the basic level. By shooting manual right away, you're throwing too many variables into your image, and you don't know how to control them. You don't know why this image is dark. Is it dark because my aperture is too open? Is it dark because my shutter speed is too fast? Is it dark because my ISO isn't high enough? You don't know. Practice, practice, practice. But practice just one thing at a time. Get good at that one thing. Don't jump into the deep end. Learn how to dog paddle first. Monty says, I agree, Shawn. That's terrible advice. It's a really great way to discourage a new camera owner and have it turn into a piece of coffee table sculpture. Absolutely. Absolutely, because that's just frustrating. Very, very few people can pick up on creating good images in manual mode as a beginner. It's very, very hard. Scott Thrift says, what turned me off trying to use a DSLR? I had access to one and couldn't work it all out. Exactly. Susan Gare says, I'm still happy with my iPhone, but I did think about buying a Zeiss lens for it. I want a wider angle sometimes. I don't know if I do that, Susan. If only because you're putting a lens in front of a lens. So right there, you're going to get a degradation in quality. You're going to put a lens in front of another lens, and the original lens isn't great. Your iPhone takes good pictures for a phone. If you want wide angle, look at maybe buying a wide angle point and shoot. That might be a better use. The point and shoot will be physically smaller than your iPhone. It still fits in a pocket, still fits in a purse, and you'll get a much wider field of view with better glass than you will buying a third-party Zeiss lens. Wayne says, given the sensor, I'm not sure that would help much, but Shawn would have more accurate insights. Yeah, I don't think that's your best way of going about it, Susan. I like the Olo clip. The Olo clip, though, I like the Olo clip as a cool little gadget. Its fisheye is awful, and the chromatic aberration, or the what's called the ghosting on some of them, isn't great. So if you do buy an Olo clip, buy one where you can return it easily. Make sure you've got a 2-week return policy. Scott Thrift, maybe Shawn can get a hold of a lens kit and try it out. I have tried them out. I've tried out almost all of them. And none of them are as good as even a basic point and shoot. Sherry says, I have the Photo Jojo lens kit. They're fine, but they're obviously not professional level photos. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Susan says, Logan has turned the TV on at the Democratic National Convention. Logan's 9. That's a pretty cool kid. That's pretty cool. Anyway, as always, if you have any questions about photography, please send them off to me. You guys know by now I'm happy to answer any kind of questions that you might have about taking pictures or about gear or about technique or anything else along those lines. I love helping you guys figure this stuff out. As always, send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Please send me emails anytime during the week or right now, anytime you so feel like you need to ask a question. Our friend Scott Thrift down there in Sydney, Australia. Oh, Scott's in the IRC chat room. Hey, Scott. I didn't make the connection between the two of you. Scott says, why Pokemon Go rocks? Listened to last week's show and heard you talking about Pokemon Go. I thought I would share a friend of mine's experience. My friend is, unfortunately, basically a shut-in. After being assaulted a number of years ago, he hardly leaves his home. I convinced him to load Pokemon Go last week, and oh my God, he's been out of the house every day for at least an hour. He finds it exciting and comforting to have something to concentrate on. As he lives in a very small town in England, he doesn't have many Pokemon to catch, so I've been logging in for him one day a week while I travel into inner-city Sydney and catch things for him to help in advance. Shh! You're not supposed to do that, but good for you, Scott. For him and me, this game is an excellent tool to encourage social interaction. Oh, absolutely. I was having this argument with somebody last week. They thought Pokemon Go was stupid. Yeah, it is. It's a game. At its base level, it is stupid. But please, I could not convince this person of this. Expand your mind beyond your own experience. See how much joy people are getting outside, walking around, talking to others. Yes, there's horror stories about people getting mugged and falling into lakes, and ignore that stuff. That's a very tiny minority. I want the news media, for every story they have about some moron at the Holocaust Museum finding Pokemon Goes, interviewing someone like Scott's friend about how it gets them out of the house. Interview somebody about how they've lost 10 pounds in the last 2 weeks because they're out walking. I know for a fact it works. I went downtown this past Saturday to go see a Dr. Seuss exhibit, Theodore Geisel. There's a bunch of his artwork was being shown off downtown. And a meeting of some folks from my meetup group. So as always, I got there like a half hour early. And normally what I would do is I would get to the location. I would just wait. I'd find someplace to sit down. I'd turn on Twitter and I'd read my tweets. Or I'd open up my Pocket app and I'd read some articles. But because I was downtown Vancouver, I opened up Pokemon. I opened up Pokemon Go and saw down that block, there's a creature to capture. Dum, 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 dum. So off I go. I went walking down the block. And I found the creature, threw a couple Pokeballs at him. I can't get the hang of throwing the Pokeballs. Threw a couple Pokeballs at him, and I captured him. So here I am, a grown-ass middle-aged man, standing on the street corner, West Georgia, downtown Vancouver, laughing to myself because I caught a little Pokemon creature. It was fun. I'm by myself. It was kind of fun. I look at my watch. I still got 15 minutes. Are there more Pokemon around? Yep, sure enough, up that block, there's another Pokemon. Dum, 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 dum. So up I go. I walked up. Went looking around for the Pokemon. Oh, there's one. Got him. And again, I'm standing there in the street corner smiling, laughing to myself. I just caught 2 Pokemon. Walk back down to meet the people at my meetup group. How anyone can say that what I just did was a bad thing, you have no sense of fun, no sense of enjoyment of your life. Yes, certainly, you may not want to do it. I get that. I have no problem with you saying you don't want to do it. But you saying that what I just did was stupid, a waste of time, yes, it was. But it gave me joy. It made me smile. I had fun doing it. If you think those 3 things are bad, go screw yourself. Okay? If you think that Scott's friend getting out of the house for an hour a day, walking, getting exercise, having fun, capturing Pokemons is a bad thing, get off my planet. Because we don't need people like you. We need better people than you on this planet. Sherry says, Shawn, you have to use your index finger. Much easier than throwing with your thumb. Yeah, I guess that would work. I also heard there's a way to throw a curveball, too. So I want to practice that. But, yeah, it's fun. Scott says, also, as to Mac upgrade cycles and announcements, I think the days of big all singing announcements for new Macs are dead. I'm pretty sure they never did an all singing announcement, Scott. Um, I think the days of big all announcements for new Macs are dead and gone. A new Mac, meh. Unless it's a huge and new form factor, such as the Mac Pro was, I think Apple are simply going to announce new models as a side note and major product announcements like the iPhone upgrades. Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. I don't think, unless there's a physical form factor change for the Macs that we're expecting to see in the fall, in September, in October, I think they might get mentioned at an iPhone event or an Apple Watch event. I don't think they're going to be events by themselves. Unless it's, like you said, a Mac Pro redesign, which they're not going to do. Unless it's going to be a MacBook Pro redesign, which I don't think they're going to do. It'll just be either a mention at an iPhone event or even not even a mention, just a press release later on. Thanks for the email, Scott. Appreciate that. That's Scott from Australia sending us emails. Why have I lost my... Oh, there it is. Jason Painter, also in Australia. I live in an interesting city, but I find it hard to see it through the eyes of a traveler. Last year I visited London, Devon, and Scotland, and every mundane street and building was fascinating because I'd never been there before. Do you have any tips for seeing your own environment in a new way? I had an idea along these lines. If there's a person who doesn't live here, yet is interested in something in Sydney, I could go out and shoot it for them. I find it easy to do favors and work for other people in lieu of my own work. Yeah, that's a good point, Jason. And don't worry, it's not just you. It happens to a lot of people. I was always fascinated to learn that when I traveled, so many people hadn't been to the things in their own hometown. For example, when I traveled to Toronto, I was amazed how few Torontonians had ever been to the top of the CN Tower or had been to the Ontario Science Center. They didn't go to those things. And so I thought it was just, Torontonians are dicks. But when I traveled to New York City, so many New Yorkers had never been to the Statue of Liberty, had never been to the Empire State Building, had never been to the top of the World Trade Centers. When we went to the World Trade Center for Macworld Expo in 2001, we took several New Yorkers came with us. And I asked them, they said, well, no, we're going with you because I've never been there before. You tend not to go to the touristy things in your own hometown, your own home state, your own home province maybe, because they're touristy things. They're things only tourists do. Well, go ahead and be a tourist. One of the things I do here in Vancouver with my meetup group is I have an activity called Be a Tourist in Your Own Town. And we actually go and do the touristy things. So, for example, there's a group called the Tour Guys here in Vancouver. There's also in Toronto, for any of our Toronto listeners. They offer free walking tours of Vancouver. And so, for those of you who've been to Vancouver, one of the famous areas is Gastown and Chinatown. And they offer a free walking tour of Gastown and Chinatown. And it's a 2-hour tour. And they give you all kinds of neat information about an area of the city that you've been to, but you don't know anything about. So, Jason, try that. Try doing some tourist stuff. Buy a guidebook. Find those things. One of the great things, I know they have them in Sydney, is those hop-on, hop-off bus things. Where you hop on the tour bus and the tour guide takes you through your city, and there's an audio component to it where he's talking about that kind of stuff. First of all, you'll be on the top of a tour bus, so your pictures will be from a different angle, which might give you a different view of your world. Secondly, you'll learn things about Sydney that you may not know. Unless you were already immersed in the history of Sydney, those guys often have information that you don't know. Same as Sydney Harbor. Sydney Harbor is one of the most beautiful harbors in the world. I'll assume they offer tours of the harbor. I bet you've never taken one, have you? go ahead and jump on a tour boat. Go be a tourist. Find out what tourists like. The other thing you can do, Jason, is to do a Flickr search for Sydney and find some interesting photos there and then go recreate them. Not copy them, but recreate them. Go to that place that this person, whether a tourist or not, thought was interesting, an image that you like, and go and explore that image. See if you can't get the same or similar image. Scott Thrift says, there's so much of Sydney people never see. I love to catch the small inner harbor ferries and get off at random stops. You can also download apps for lots of cities that have amazing historical walking tours. Another great idea. Just download the touristy stuff for your city and just go exploring that way. Museums and things like that. Sherry said, I didn't do any of the stereotypical Montreal stuff when I was there, but I did go to the Cat Cafe. Good for you. So yeah, just make the attempt to see the city in a different light, to see your world in a different way. It can be hard, it's because you get so used to it that the things that other people think are interesting you find mundane, or again too touristy or boring. Maybe they are, but give it a try. Be a tourist in your own city and see what it's like to wander around. And as Wayne says, taking a tour of your own town also reveals how much those tour guys lie to people. Maybe you've got a different experience than I do, Wayne. But for me, I will always do a lot of reading about a city that I'm going to. And they may lie about the small stuff, but I've never had them lie about the big stuff, the stuff I've already read in other tour books and that kind of thing. So maybe they do. I haven't found that. I used to love giving tours of Halifax. Halifax, the downtown area, is very walkable and very historic. And used to do that all the time when I used to work for the Halifax Hostel. And every morning in the summertime, we take 5 to 10 people who stay in the hostel for a walking tour of the city. So give that a try. Any other emails? Let me just check my email box. Nope, nothing else. Nope. Okay, fine. That's it. We're done. Folks, I'll say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining me here each and every week. Also, thanks to you guys for being tuned in to the show each and every week. As always, send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!